Okay, so let's start. My name is Anatoly Motkin, and I'm president of StrategEast. Today, our panel discussion is dedicated to digital resilience in Eurasia, and what does it mean for each one of our countries. And digital resilience as a term is relatively new term. We were talking previously about cybersecurity in some parts of what today is outlined by this term. So the digital transformation in Eurasian countries, which was proceeding at a high speed as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, has accelerated significantly. How to protect the region from the risks associated with too rapid digital transformation of the economy, society, and the government. These issues we will discuss today, and let me address the first question to you, Anett. Before that, I would like to introduce our distinguished guests. Giorgi Iashvili is co-founder and CEO of Georgian Information Security Association. Igor Kotsiuba, CEO of iSolutions LLC and co-founder of Healthymity. Dmytro Lazuchenkov, senior manager and in advisory department, leader of the IT risks and assurance practice in Ernst & Young, Ukraine, and Anett Numa, digital transformation advisor in E-estonia briefing center. So the first question to you, Anett. Estonia is without any doubt the champion in digital transformation in all Eurasian region, and we spoke about this with a good friend of StrategEast, Mr. Ives, and he told us different strategies that were used in Estonia for digital transformation. But what does it mean, digital resilience, for your country today? We know the cyber attacks against you after the Bronze Soldier events by Russians, and you were actually also the pioneer of being attacked, cyber attacked by other countries. So please explain us, what does it mean, digital resilience for your country, and how it could be replicated, your practices or your best practices to other countries?
First of all, hello from Estonia here. I'm very happy to be invited to the talk here today, and thank you for a very interesting question as well here. So if I would have to define what it means for Estonia, or like as you said before, we have been attacked for like actually many times. I mean, that was just a huge one that happened in 2007, but there has been also many other attacks as well here. What I would say from my side, even though that today 99% of the things are fully working online already, we can't stop where we are today, and that's the strategy, what I would say. I mean, technology is changing all the time. It's a process of developing and improving all the time, and I would say that it's all about actually keeping up with the change of technology, and that's what I always like to say from my side here. And of course, cybersecurity actually needs constant attention in every aspect. So what we have been doing recently here in Estonia was that also we realized that, I mean, here physically, I don't think there is going to be any wars like happening physically on the grounds anymore. At least I do hope so. But there are like these cyber wars happening every other second. And that means that we just can't focus on armed forces or having this kind of physical forces helping and protecting us here. But since a few years now, we have also had Cyber Command and Cyber Defense League. So we even have people that are prepared in order to protect our state when there will be something happening. And even more amazing, these people work on voluntary basis, by the way. So they have been prepared, but we need them help when there is actually something happening. So as I said, we always have to improve the systems because technology is changing all the time. That's one part of the strategy. And at the same time, we can't forget about the cybersecurity aspects. We need to find ways how to make the entire system more secure, because if there is one single failure, the entire country would lose the trust to the government, and we can't afford that.
Thank you. And the follow-up question is almost the same to Igor Kotsiuba. You have huge experience of working on both cybersecurity and wider as a digital resilience for Ukraine. You also are head of, as I understand, cybersecurity department in AmCham in Ukraine. And the question is, first, what are the challenges in digital resilience field for Ukraine? And what is the collaboration with American companies and American maybe authorities in this field in Ukraine, please?
Thank you, Anatoly, for the question. Basically, question is really important, utmostly, I would say. Basically, there is a different approach, even to definition of digital resilience. I mean, for instance, basically we understand from the term that we must be prepared, or we must be ready to get recovered faster. But again, there are different approaches, and basically in AmCham, we just organized a working group. I mean, cybersecurity, of course, is hot topic and good hashtag, and then basically we organized this working group, like gathering all the stakeholders who are interested in this domain. And talking about digital resilience, because we are participant of many European Commission funded projects on digital forensics and digital transformation in rural areas and in healthcare. So basically, for instance, in energy field, cyber resilience is more about the self-isolation, for instance, of specific domains or subsystems. About in energy sector, people prefer to have ability to deliver cyber attack and traces of cyber attack to the court of law. That's because usually people, cybersecurity stakeholders, they are focusing at being resilient in the moment of attack, and people and basically law enforcement agencies and ENISA, for instance, European Union stakeholders, they want to have ability to deliver these pieces of traces or attack to the court of law, right? I mean, to reinvent the rule of law in cyberspace. So basically, we understand that everything with every device which has electricity inside probably has an IP address assigned, and we understand that the landscape of attack is huge. And again, what I see in different parts of the world, different approaches. For instance, we are member of OASIS OpenC2. It's like law enforcement community. They try to create command and control languages, machine-to-machine languages, just to enable a new way of being resilient towards cyber attacks. So there are different approaches and different definitions, but anyway, the good thing that all the stakeholders, they understand the crucial moment we've got and living right now.
Thank you, Igor. And the next question is to Giorgi. You worked in, as I understand, the National Bank of Georgia, and so the cybersecurity or the digital resilience of banking sector is one of the most important and while in this region, but also Georgia, along with the Estonia, are included in top 10 cybersecurity or digital resilient, the top 10 list. So first, could you please explain us what are the challenges in this field for Georgia, and what is the Georgian experience? How have you succeeded to get to this very distinguished list of the most successful states in cybersecurity and digital resilience list, please?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for inviting me to such beautiful virtual event. But regarding the digital resilience ranking and regarding our presence in the top 10, of course, we're not equal to Estonian colleagues, of course, and their route and their path and the way have been much more long to this ranking. But on the other hand, we share with Estonian colleagues the same story regarding the cybersecurity development, because they started in 2007 and we started a year after the aggression from the Russian counterparts and our big neighbor within the cyber as well. Since 2008, it started quite intensively developing, and the involvement of the European Union as well as the NATO itself have been huge, and the impact of the NATO countries have been huge, including Estonia. I personally can say that I used to work for the National Bank of Georgia, but before I worked for the Central Election Commission, the election body of the Georgia. So we personally had, regarding 2 years, we had personally invited Estonian experts who helped us to make the election infrastructure resilient for the, especially the election infrastructure. And I don't tell, and I don't say regarding the other fields and other sectors of the country. So it started within the legislation, and I think that the Georgian legislation have been really, I could rank it by 8 from 10, because they have some challenges, of course, but it started after 2008, and in 2010 was the first agency developed. There was the data exchange agency have been created under the Ministry of Justice, which is the main body, which used to be a main body. Now it's kind of a different organizational structure, but under the Ministry of Justice and under the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the collaboration between these two have been conducted, the creation of the CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team, which was really huge help from Estonia and from Lithuania, and as well as the United States of America and the UK. So the CERT Georgia started its life in 2010, and I think they work, and they have been working quite intensively and quite effectively, despite their capacities are a bit limited to compare with the different actors in our geopolitical region. But we follow our Estonian colleagues regarding the scale of the comparability. I mean, like the small country, but the big capabilities within the cyber, it might be much more visible than to compare, for example, Georgia and our, like the northern neighbor within the other fields, of course. You can't compare these countries, but within the cyber, of course, they have huge advantage, but according to the latest states and statistics, what you mentioned, like the I2 ranking have been announced like last year, and Georgia have been on a 6th place in Europe and 9th in the world within the digitalization overall, not only the cybersecurity, but of course, all these things have been done within the collaboration of the Georgian colleagues within the our friends from the international society, but also the challenges that I don't want to mention all the things like, oh, we are so good and so on. Of course, we are not. It's not enough. The things are done, are good, but we still have to work hard, because the new things and challenges, especially the increased connectivity within the country, it brings also the increased sense of insecurity and vulnerability, and new threats from state-sponsored actors, as well as some other industry-related cyber attacks have been also identified in recent years, which have not been common for Georgia. Usually we were trying to survive from some attacks from our neighbor country and state-sponsored attacks, but just recently, last year, it have been identified some industry espionage and industry-related cyber attacks, which is also very interesting, and some of them I can disclose have been in the financial sector, but it's also very interesting because of the Soviet past and Soviet legacy. We did not experience very wealth and developed industry as some other Eastern Partnership countries. So the things have been done in past 11, 12 years in Georgia. I could really evaluate as a really good things, but on the other hand, the last year attack from the Russian counterparts, which have been very huge attacks and have been affected up to like 2,000 web pages from overall the country, according to different sources. But within this, also the cooperation between the our colleagues from the US and UK have been very crucial within this, but we still have some details and unclassified information regarding these attacks. But on the other hand, I would just mention the main challenges. I will just try to mention the one main challenge is like the collaboration between the public and private agencies, like the public-private partnership things here in Georgia is not as in level as we want to be, and mostly the cybersecurity is on the governmental side, and we see that the all the responsibility for the cybersecurity in overall country is on the governmental side, and even the private entities, even you mentioned the financial sector, and my work experience within the Central Bank of Georgia, and what I see within the financial sector, even the biggest commercial entities, the biggest banks here in Georgia, they rely mostly on the things within the governmental things, and despite they develop their own cybersecurity resilience and infrastructure for the cybersecurity, despite all this, they mostly rely on the governmental bodies, and mostly the things are connected within the computer emergency response team, which is the governmental CERT here in Georgia. So one main thing, of course, there are main challenges, and they can be like listed up to 10 or 15 key challenges, what we really want to increase and improve attention to this direction. But one of the key challenges, what I see is that mostly the things are on the governmental side, despite the things and capabilities and capacities are much higher on the commercial side, but it's kind of not balanced. I mean, the roles and responsibilities in cybersecurity ecosystem and responsibilities for cyber in the country mostly relies on the governmental side. So that's one of the key challenges, and that's what we call like the bad Soviet legacy, because everything should be done by government. What we really get used to here from the different, not only in cyber, but the government is responsible for something, and I'm pretty sure it will be mostly common within the other countries, especially Ukraine. So that's from the perspective of Georgian cybersecurity community.
Thank you, Giorgi. And the next question to you, Dmytro. Igor has described widely what happens with the private sector. You're also engaged a lot in the government sector, and we know that in Ukraine, one of the priorities now led by President Zelensky, also by Mr. Fedorov, who is the Minister of Digital Transformation of Ukraine, is governmental services. Also, the country in the smartphone. And what are the threats for this? We understand what are the benefits of state in the smartphone, and we understand that it's easier just to have your ID there and your driving license in your smartphone, but it also makes all this stuff and all this information vulnerable. So how it has been is being protected in Ukraine, and what are the threats and for all this system now, and how do you actually work with this and tackle these threats, please?
Thank you, Anatoly. It's a pleasure to speak here. Thank you for invitation. It's a pleasure to see here well-known faces here. Igor, hello. Let me start from the scratch. Yes, as a representative of one of big four firms, we have a lot of different contracts, not only with in terms of information security and resiliency, not only within the commercial organization, but as well within state enterprises and public sector institutions. And actually, it was a nice trend several years ago when a lot of different state-owned enterprises started to, to streamline the information security program, because it's hard to use any other word to those activities, because at that moment we can only conclude that it was the level of its capacity, of the level of maturity was around zero in terms of information security processes, systems, and context at all. Yeah, but the problem within state enterprises and probably within almost all government institutions is that we do not have, transition of power of attorney from previous government, from previous top management to new one. And almost we very often experience the problem when a huge work was done by previous management team with involvement of big consultancy firms, with involvement of international partners, and all that work is just kept in the bookstore, and that's all, and nothing is implemented, and all the programs was stopped after the stopping of power of attorney of those top management or of political officers, officials, let's say like that. That's I believe that this is a really big problem in Ukraine. And now let's come to your question regarding the new facilities within digital services for citizens of Ukraine, which is called DIA, and we have a lot of other one. And what I can say, actually, we had a big stack of incidents regarding those services. Not all of them are point for technical issues with information security. A lot of them are point for the process inability to arrange a right workflow, because it brings a lot of possibilities for corruption, for fraudulent activities, etc., etc. And the point is that now all those services are made by IT guys. And we know that IT and information security usually have inherent conflict of interest, because for IT, it's usually more valuable and more important to go as quick as business or as a requester wants, without any doubts and without some kind of information security issues to be considered. And that was another problem, because from my perspective, an effort for establishment of information security within those newly arranged services is quite insufficient, especially considering big criticality of data which is stored and processed within those services. Because we have the personal data, we have the even health data for some instances. And actually, I believe that this data should be protected not only from technical perspective, considering all cyber risk, but as well within the workflow and processes, considering fraudulent risk and risk of corruption.
Thank you. Thank you, Dmytro. And the next question is to you, Anett. Estonia, among all the countries that were occupied at some stage by Soviet Union, today per capita, you're one of the wealthiest, I think the wealthiest country. And I would like to hear from you, what part of this success is thanks to the digital transformation of Estonia? And how is it your new economy is based only on digital economy, or it should stay based also on traditional economy? And does it make it more vulnerable than other economies which are not so digitally transformed or developed?
Thank you for a good question. And yeah, I must agree with you here that actually we are very lucky that we got independent. And by the way, tomorrow we're going to have a very special day. So Estonia turns 29 years old now. So it's our pre-independence day. But definitely a very big role why we were able to achieve this kind of results, especially when we compare our economical situation right now to Latvia or Lithuania, who got independent exactly the same time as we did, is fully based on the digital stories. And I've been talking with our former Prime Minister, who was behind of all of these decisions, and just like trying to understand about where did they see a need, like more than 26 years ago, that we should start thinking about that. By the way, do you know that like the first decision by the parliament was already signed at 1994, that we're going to start building this kind of technology solutions? So very, very long time ago, as I said, 26 years almost. And they said also that actually there were so many problems that we were facing here back at that time, such as corruption, that was mentioned here many times. Then, of course, lacking of resources in so many different sectors, because if you are like just we gained the independence, then you don't have enough money. I mean, we didn't have resources in any sector at all. And we needed to find ways how to manage with this small amount of money. And also one of the biggest problems is that Estonia was facing here. And I guess all of my colleagues here right now could also agree with me that most of the other Soviet Union countries as well are facing the same issue, that like people are still like living in small, tiny areas. Because Estonian people just don't live in capital city, but they actually live in very tiny areas across the state here. And that was a point where we realized that people need to get access, first of all, to the services. And at the same time, we want the people to be able to live across the state here, also in the very small areas, very small towns, and they could continue doing business in the smaller towns as well. They don't only have to do that in the bigger cities. So that was a point where we started building the services, knowing that if we will make internet accessible everywhere, then you can run your business, you can do whatever you like to across the state, and that will boost the economical system as well, because then like the city councils can manage by themselves, and then so on as well. So I wouldn't say that we are vulnerable because of that, but I would say that we have more opportunities, because look at the world right now. I mean, people are staying at home because, I mean, the crisis hit the world without us even like noticing that it could ever happen. So right now the businesses can still operate here in Estonia. So what I would say that nothing really changed because of the crisis here, because we were already able to do everything fully online without having to have any kind of human contacts. And of course also on these kind of ways to sell your products online and fully managed online. So I would say that it's not like an issue, but more opportunity. There's Estonian companies to do things fully online as well. But yeah, I fully agree with you here that most of our success story is based what we have been doing by the digital sector, because with just one single solution, by just signing documents online, Estonian government saves 2% of the GDP. So if you think about, we have trying to do some comparisons, 2% of the GDP that is being saved by signing documents online is the money we spend on defense and security. Which one is more important? Obviously, the security sector. So that's very important. But I was like to finish with my answer here, and then maybe comment on some other answers as well. I fully feel from my side here that as we have so similar background with Ukraine, with Georgia, with like many other countries as well, we should fully work together and share our experiences, our lessons, and so on as well, because I would say the culture background is the same, the history is the same. Why not to help each other, especially to become more strong, because the biggest security issues today are fully based online.
Thank you, Anett, for this answer. And I'd like to ask you, Igor. We know that there were some attempts to cyber attack and to steal some information, not necessarily by your neighboring rival Russians, but also by China. And we know some attempts in Antonov airplane plant, production plant, and in others. And to what degree do you think the cyber threats are influencing the development of Ukrainian economy today? What do you think should be done by the companies themselves, and what is the role of the government assisting centralizedly to the companies to tackle those attempts by either other countries or sometimes by the competitors?
What I would say here, from our experience, is that you need to have a central body that is regulating all these kind of cyber attacks. We have an organization in one of our information system authority, and this is called StrategEast, and they're the people that are working 24 hours. The only department where the lights are on 24 hours, because there has to be someone. So the trick there is to be able to tackle this kind of attacks like actually in live. In most of the other countries, they understand when there has been some attacks, I don't know, a week later. That's not helpful. So you need to see this kind of things happening in live. And what's the biggest success that we have achieved here is the cooperation between the private sector and the government. So what we have been asking all the banks, all different other institutions that store very, very sensitive information that might actually influence our security aspects here, is to report as soon as possible to the government institutions when there is something happening. They are the people that are able to help you. And these kind of reports have to happen again, not the week later when you discover something, but as soon as the IT department is discovering that there are some attacks to the bank. I used to work also in a bank before, so I know exactly that we needed to report like immediately when something happened, so that they can help you, and then they can help you to discover who was behind that and so on. So this is definitely very, very, very important aspect. And secondly, not just the companies, it also comes to every single citizen. So what we did here, we opened by the police one online platform where you can super easily report about every single email that might be like, I don't know, you're like feeling like, okay, that's very strange email, and then I'm afraid to open this up or so. So we can write down the email address, what you were like, what was inside there, send photos, send files, whatever, and then the police would start investigation, this kind of things. So even from the citizen side. So I believe in this kind of huge kind of cooperation between different sectors, and I think this is very necessary in the state part to educate, to be the central body, and to actually investigate these cases. At the same time, you need to let the private sector know where they could actually contact and then what they should do there. So our I would say recommendation here is that try to implement the central body and try to inform private sector institutions to work with you, because that's important. That the sooner you realize that there was a attack, the better the results, and you were not going to lose that much data.
Thank you, Anett. And now to ask you, Igor, the same question, but about Ukraine, because now you have maybe more challenges from all the sides than any other country, and also again it's internal threats, and we know also some people in your country have enough funds to do the same, to use the same budget for the same purposes as some governments, and also you have some external threats. So again, about the influence of all those threats on your economy, and what is the interaction between the government and between the companies and between the private entrepreneurs in terms of cybersecurity and digital resilience?
Thank you for the question. Basically, as there is a problem of, we are lacking this consistency within governments, within, decades of change in governments. That's the problem. Dmytro and I, for instance, we see the same people, right? They are rotating from entities to entities. They are still those great people here in Ukraine, but there is a problem of this consistency, because, for instance, standards and compliance, that's the basement. Basically, in cyber realm, standards and compliance are pretty newborn. In physical world, we've got them for decades and centuries. Standards and everywhere, right? And but there is another problem here in Ukraine of not having liability for this. For instance, critical infrastructure, we understand that the whole infrastructure and the essential services should be in compliance with best practices, with standards. But how can we embrace all these best practices? We need to have liability for and people responsible for cybersecurity within organizations. And there is a problem. Politicians probably will not vote, let's say, for specific law with liability, just because it's kind of the fire service, which is testing the premises, for instance. So people perceive new regulations and new liabilities very badly. And this is like political threat. I would say that's why we are not voting for these specific liabilities. Second thing about the threats and where they are originating from, there is a problem because, I mean, in cyberspace, we don't have real evidences. Basically, we've got some indicators, and then we put a political assessment of this indicator on top of that, and then we deliver it as a evidence, but it's not. I mean, for instance, attack can be originating from Norwegian server or data center, and then we can see some North Korean hackers behind it. But then, I mean, and then we put a name of attacker as a third country or third actor. So basically, European Union and within Europe, law enforcement agencies try to have this unified approach to evidences. Just because, for instance, indicators of compromise, which is widely used by cyber security experts as a evidence, but it's not. I mean, it's in an indicator, and attackers today can easily deceive law enforcement agencies. They can easily put in other indicators of compromise, and then we say, okay, this is North Korea, or we say, okay, this attack is from Norway, but we say, okay, this is an attacker, even though the attack was originating from Norway, right? I mean, that's not only problem of Ukraine. We work in working group in the USA, and for instance, we organize a workshop on cyber crimes investigations every year in the US, this year in Atlanta. And I mean, law enforcement agencies, we've got really interesting discussions there. And basically the world is lacking unified approach towards this. And I think that's a problem. But again, on the other hand, we are moving in really right direction. And I believe we will have a unified approach among our countries. I mean, partners like Estonia, Georgia, we always, I mean, in cyberspace, we perceive ourselves as friends and working on the same basically piece of material, right? And we basically unify this. And the approach will be globalized, I believe, and that's amazing that there are global initiatives for this.
I would actually like to add here as well, because you said that we're missing this kind of central like approach to the cyber attacks and so on as well. That was something very important to Estonians as well here, because now back in May, we were holding the UN Security Council position and the presidency of the UN Security Council. And the first time ever in history, we raised the question that like the cybersecurity should have like actually international framework. And we should start taking this kind of attacks as serious as the user crimes. And I think that's a great start already. But I'm still like so sad to think about that it's 2020, and that was the first time when the UN Security Council started talking about the topics, which is already like questionable. If I mean, it's too late already for that kind of things. But it's great that we're starting thinking about that. There has to be like very, very large framework in order to how to deal with this kind of attacks as well here.
Thank you, Anett. And the next question to you, Giorgi. Georgia, historically or geographically, is I would call it connectivity junction for the whole region. I mean, the Caucasus Online cable, as we know, it leads internet also to Armenia, and actually the only cable that leads internet to Armenia. And we know that recently, when this operator part of it at least was sold to a Azeris company, and there is a concern in Armenia on this regard. I mean, that they will get disconnected or their traffic would get controlled by Azerbaijan. And we also know that the World Bank is planning to put another cable on under the Black Sea that will lead through Georgia to Armenia. So what do you think in all this story, what is the role of Georgia that could be positive for the digital resilience in regional scale, and not in single country scale? And I think in general, that is more important to us to understand, because it's also Georgia is one of the countries with the most developed civil society in this region, and it's important to see what is the responsibility that Georgia takes on itself. Please.
Thanks for the great question. Regarding the civil society, I would say that the things what we see in Belarus right now shows that most developed civil societies, not only in Georgia, but Belarusian people are also showing quite strong and very interesting things happening right now. So now regarding your question, of course, the things which historically started from Georgia, like from the beginning of the 90s, not only the internet cable from Bulgaria to Georgia, which lies under the Black Sea, was not the first thing. Of course, it started from the non-cyber things, the pipeline, which is the oil. The other one is like the gas pipeline, which connects Azerbaijan to Turkey and transfers the Azerbaijani oil to Europe through Georgia and then Turkey. So it started, the first thing, like Georgia started, and as we like to say, it's we came back to, and we returned to our historical thing when we were part of the this Silk Road trans-Caucasian geopolitical the way, as we call. So regarding this cable, of course, among the years, it was like more than 8 years or 9 years. It was the only one and only cable and only connection, only link to connect, for example, Armenia to European internet service providers, as well as some Azerbaijani providers were mostly dependent on this cable as well. So just recently it was sold, the company who owns and who operates the cable itself was sold to Azerbaijani company, and that raised a lot of questions regarding, not only from Armenian colleagues, but from even in Georgia, because according to the new things, the researches have been conducted last year in 2018, it was the additional things have been initiated from the companies, like the small internet providers here in Georgia, to increase the availability of the overall internet connection within the country. So the World Bank project you mentioned, it's also connected to the previous owner of this cable. So we call it Potivarna cable because it's connecting Bulgaria to Georgia, and one of the creators of this Potivarna cable project is leading this World Bank project regarding the new cable and new initiative to parallel this connection from Europe to Georgia. So this raised questions which are not answered yet, and these most questions are to our Georgian National Communication Commission, and these questions have been raised. It was interesting, not only from the Armenian colleagues, not only from the internet and information security communities from Georgia, but even from the governmental parts. So some of the governmental officials, they officially raised this question to the Georgian Communication Agency, which gave the license to the company who have been sold to the Azerbaijani one. So importance is very high because of as we see the resilience of the country is dependent to the multi-approach level, and we have to be sure that receiving the internet connection, firstly receiving on an accurate and adequate price. The first thing what really were the things that monopoly of the internet connection shouldn't be developed. Of course, that's good, but it was not even a monopoly. Monopoly was only from the connection side. I mean, when the cable gives the internet content and internet throughput to the other, when it comes to the Georgian side, it was spread to the other ISPs as well. So the monopoly was only under the framework which operated some Georgian local providers to the how they are connected to this cable. But it worked quite well. There was not such kind of like really good and really like significant challenges to that. But somehow it's still under the question. It's still open question why it was sold, and they raised main questions: the dependency on the dependency of the different countries. Of course, the Georgia state interest is quite different, but we still haven't decided, we haven't identified what interest of Georgia in this particular case. I mean, selling the rights to the internet pipeline, so-called, to the our local neighbors, Azerbaijani company. From Georgian side, okay, we can just still find out the ways now what's happening there. But from Armenian side, of course, that's quite most important thing. They don't want to be dependent within the internet society and internet connection. They don't want to be connected to the country which they are in a state of war currently. And as you see, like just the recent things, like 3-4 months ago, it's still escalated quite quickly there. They renowned the things. So most of the things here, even in Caucasus, in South Caucasus, most of the things are led by Georgia in cybersecurity, in international cooperation, in information security and information technologies, and all the things have been like quite particularly operated way that the things are going quite well, and just suddenly this news appear that the all the things are going quite back to the Azerbaijani colleagues. So it still raised the questions that it's not open. It's not the open discussion still. And what we, from our side, the Georgian Information Security Society, and from all the other communities within the IT and IT society within the Georgia, the most of the things what we ask there is to have the open discussion on that. So of course it can't be disclosed somehow. The original ideas what have been stated, what have been behind this solution and behind this bid when it was sold to Azerbaijani company, but the discussion, at least the discussion should be open, and we try to involve here our colleagues from Baku and our colleagues from Yerevan as well. And the most interesting thing and most important thing is they don't hesitate to interconnect and interoperate within each other when it's initiated by Georgian colleagues. And we invite both of them into Tbilisi, and having the the official, non-formal discussion regarding the different issues, but now we consider to do this regarding this particular case as well. As we have the answer on that, as we have the result of this kind of semi-formal meeting, we will definitely inform you on this.
Thank you. Thank you. And the next question I would like to ask to address you, Dmytro. Now, we understand what happens in Ukraine in regard of governmental initiatives to digitalize the civil service, but we still understand that many of the people in Ukraine are still, let's call it not digital but analog. And would it be actually two Ukraines, the digital and the analog Ukraine? And what is the role of of digital literacy programs for Ukraine and their importance to get most of the people who live in the country, to get them connected and then to be able to use those services that you are developing?
You know, I don't know if I'm the right person to be asked on this, actually, because yes, I have an overview of digital initiatives. I have some kind of understanding the level of penetration of digital services into the society and internet itself. I mean, LTE, wired internet, etc. Actually, looking to this from infrastructure point of view, I mean, from internet itself, I mean, the way of utilize those services. From my perspective, we do not have huge problem with this because our three main telco companies have pretty good coverage within almost all regions of Ukraine with high-speed mobile internet. We have pretty good coverage with wired internet, and I do not know actual statistic, but I used to travel a lot across Ukraine, and I didn't. Now I can't manage to find out the place where I was unable to contact to the internet. However, I believe that we still have some regions with low coverage. With respect to penetration of digital services, I think that now we have a pretty good promotion story in Ukraine on these services, and we still have, I would say, some layers of our society. Yeah, so we have Orthodox guys who are 60 and above, who have a cell with buttons, you know, and for those guys, actually, I don't believe that we will be able to introduce those services, and I think that this is retrogrades. We have people in urban society. I mean, it's big cities, middle-sized cities, where penetration of these services is really quite big, and I believe that it will be rapid since we will get more and more functionality. From the perspective of village people, I mean farmers and guys in the distant regions and distant villages from the center of Ukraine, from the district centers. I think that the main idea is that we should understand whether they need them. Yes, because their occupation and their lifestyle will bring us that we need to analyze whether they need those services or not. Because actually, my wife is originally from Western Ukraine, from a small city. I was there and have a lot of friends there. And for those guys whose occupation is concerned with some government institutions or with some governmental services, they all have those services in their smartphones. But for example, for agronomes, for farmers, for guys who are working in the field, they just do not have a chance to use it because they do not need those services. And I believe that we will require some time to onboard them into the digital world, but only after the capacity of those services and extent and number of those services will be increased, and they will cover their interest.
Thank you, Dmytro. And I know that you need to leave us earlier, a couple of minutes.
But
so
I have several minutes left.
Okay, so just we will not get surprised if you will turn off.
Okay.
And Anett, it's the same question to you. We heard a lot about the digital literacy projects in Estonia, and Mr. Ilves told us that, for example, every bank was forced to have a branch in each village, and then instead of opening a village, they just put a computer in post office and were teaching people in this village how to use a computer to get into the bank account. And it was just as an example. But I think that the digital literacy is the ABC of all those projects, because if people don't know how to use the services, those services do not cost much. So what would be your advice for the countries which actually, for various reasons, some reasons, like in Ukraine, we know that people preferred to get diversified registries just to be able to trade with those registries instead of getting them accessible for the people. What would be your advice for a digitalization or digital transformation, the ABC, the first steps, which are the must for the countries which are only at the beginning or at the mid-level of this development?
What I always say is that everything starts from the education, and every problem is being solved by education. That's seriously the ABC of like, that should be the sentence for absolutely everything, every problem in the world. So obviously everyone needs to know how to use the services, otherwise they're not willing to do that. I actually, I had some visitors from Georgia. They were like some teachers, and we were discussing, saying that you actually do have the services working already, but they said the amount of people that are using them is very small. And we tried to investigate that and understand what's the reason. And some of them that were a little bit older teachers said like, but I got no idea. I have never used that, and I'm so afraid to do that because I don't see how that works. I have never tried that, and there is no help. And that's the thing here. So what we did since the very beginning, and my full advice for you is that try to actually start different projects. So first of all, we implemented the computer courses already from the high school level. That's fine. Then we also implemented to the university level, which is compulsory thing to do in university. But we can't stop there, because we have to help also grandparents. And that's why we started a project which was called Look at the Word. And everyone who felt that they don't have enough knowledge how to use the services could go and participate. And by the way, 10% of our entire population was participating, of entire population. And that's a very, very huge number. And that was for free. So you can come, the government was paying for your computer courses, and you learn how to use that. Just to give you the numbers so you can understand if that was a success story or not. Today, for example, when someone turns 65, they can apply for their retirement money. And do you know that 97% of 65 years old people apply for the pension by doing this online? 97% of 65-year-old people do that online. So that shows that the education that we provided back in 2000 already was a big help. And that's why people today are not afraid to use that. I mean, my grandfather is voting online when we have elections because he knows how to do that. We have helped him to do that. But one thing, even though I work for the government, what I always say is that we can't expect the government to do everything for us. So I'm looking for all the citizens and saying, if your grandmother does not know how to use any kind of service, that's your responsibility to help her. We can raise the projects and we can ask people to go in and learn how to do the things, but we have to look each other eyes and actually help each other. I mean, that's how society should work, in my opinion, in my personal opinion. We have to help each other. And that's why we also have some kind of campaigns on TV where like a very old lady is calling another old lady and they're baking something and they're like, have you tried to do your taxes online? I tried that yesterday and it was super simple. I can show you how to do that. They have like TV campaigns, and that's my advice. Try to do that. Try to make it cool. And if your grandmother is gonna use this solution one time, then they're never gonna go back to the old ways anymore. Education is an answer for absolutely everything. Do the projects, but help each other.
Thank you, Anett. And we need to wrap up this session, but the conclusion is that actually everything is everything that we imagine in the sky is the limit. But the main challenges are first the social trust. Many people do not believe that actually once they disclose their own information, it will some other people would not trade with this information. But also it's important, it makes all the processes transparent, like in Ukraine, all the registries and other things. And I think that as more transparent we would become as a result of digital transformation, as resilient we would become. Thank you for joining us today, and wish you good luck. Thank you.